Okay, the podcast set up downtown. We got motion. What's the idea? People, the conversation's open. Lee Andrews Group, the firm, yeah, we here now. Let's talk about great ideas. Have a sit down. Welcome to the podcast, the Idea People.
Welcome to the Idea People at Lee Andrews Group. My name is Rick Garcia, and we did not have to go far to find today's guest. Stephanie Keane is the creative director here at the Lee Andrews Group, and we thought she could offer some great insight into the creative needs of a firm. We're so lucky to have you. Thank you for joining us today, Steph. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited. It's so fun to listen to your radio voice already.
Oh,
this is a great, yes.
That's too sweet.
It's a great time.
You're the creative director here at Lee Andrews Group. What does a creative director do?
A creative director does many things. I like to see it first as team leadership, bringing the team together, and then, helping cultivate ideas, brand identity, design systems for the brands that we work with.
Brands, brand identities. Those are the things that if we see, I'll call it a store for lack of a better way to put it, or a business, it's what's out front, right? It's the color schemes, it's the logos, it's everything that goes with it. When you think of Amazon, there's a lot that went into the name and the style and the colors, correct? Is that part of what we're talking about when we say branding?
Yeah, with branding, I see it as the brand is the company, and then everything that the company needs that communicates to the audience goes below it. So it's the story of the brand through all the sensations, visual, audio, experiential.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that because when you say sensations, you mean that sincerely, literally, right? That
yes.
How does the look of a logo affect me when I'm purchasing a product, for example? That sort of idea. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So let's talk about your journey getting here. Let's begin with school first. Tell us where you went to school and what were your first jobs coming out of school?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I studied architecture at UC Berkeley and art, and it was wonderful because they really taught design through experience, like how, through history, how people use spaces. And the program was wonderful, and I gained a lot of amazing design skills. What I found in the real life workplace in an architecture firm, being 21, it was much too quiet of a place for me to feel comfortable. And I was like, I cannot work in an office. This isn't going to happen. So I quickly applied to graduate school to be an artist because I wanted to be a painter and I wanted a space where I could make noise and be loud. And a quiet architecture firm was not that. That being said, I got into film school. I did not get into art school. And so I decided to go to USC Film School because it was the only school that I got into, but I was so thankful for that opportunity. And there I learned, there were so many transferable skills from architecture, design to editing, and patterns in space and color theory. I love the program. And then from there I went on and I was an editor. It seemed like a very natural progression from drafting to editing. And then I worked my way up from editing to producing, building on storytelling. I worked with some large companies, and each time I get a job, I would learn something and then kind of, okay, I want to take a pivot. So I guess eventually I found my place in smaller companies to get more experience. Hands-on.
That's interesting. People, the beauty of all of our experiences is we can take a little something from all of them, and it shapes who we are. You were with some major companies, Netflix, Viacom, Yahoo, major media and internet companies. And what do you think you took from those places that helped make you who you are today?
I am so thankful for large companies that invest in education leadership. I had great manager programs that they would offer, which I think helped work with so many different parts of the company. Working with people, you have different skills and finding common language. In creativity, in the creative sector, there's a lot of unique language and tech language specific to that. And when you're doing business where that's not their first objective and that's not their knowledge, these leadership programs helped me formulate language to bring the thought together, to be more inclusive overall.
And so those were media and internet companies, and then Smashbox is a cosmetic company. So another aspect of our everyday life, and what was that experience like?
It was amazing. I was how would I say this? I enjoyed filmmaking on large scale productions. Like Yahoo was huge, and we would do things with Katie Couric and live TV, live news from New York. Big, impactful, wonderful. High stress situations, and learning how to produce a show and get it out live was amazing. What I was missing was a little bit slower, more time on set. With beauty, you really get to find the perfect light and tell this story. It's a whole different approach to filmmaking. So each career shift I did, I wanted to learn a different perspective on filmmaking, and from the clients, being on the client side and the agency side, from my experience.
In order to brand a company, you have to have a good logo. I mean, does everything kind of hinge on the logo? Is that fair to say, or is that too much importance paid to the logo?
No, I think the logo is second important to what the company and brand is, right? I think you really have to have a great product or service, and then the logo leads them there. So if you have a great logo for a product and service that isn't doing it justice, the logo will slowly kind of drift away. I think it starts with the foundation of what the service and product is, and then the logo brings it all together and focuses. It's like taking all of daylight into a single beam, focusing the energy for the company.
We're going to talk a little bit about something called design systems when we talk about how to come up with a logo creation. First of all, what is the design system, so that if you continue to say that during the interview, our listeners will know what we're talking about?
Yeah. So if you have your company and you have your logo, the design system, one way to put it is everywhere that the logo would live. Like your newsletter, your email, your business cards, your sweatshirt, your hoodies, your hats. We think of all the amazing ways that we see the LA Dodgers, right? Like how you can see it on a hat or a sweatshirt or in lights. All of those placements is actually a vector image from, Illustrator, and, resize to be able to bend on a shape and show, or resize to show up at night, or resize to show up during daylight with different lighting effects to make it work in all these different environments.
A funny story of being a kid going to a Dodger game, because you mentioned the Dodgers, and my mom being with us, and the guys would come down the aisle, with souvenirs, and so the guy's holding up a Dodger hat. We all know Dodger blue if you're in Los Angeles. And she said, "I'd like one of those, but can you give me one in red?"
Oh, that's so sweet.
And she had no idea.
Lovely.
Now, but here's the irony to that. Nowadays, whereas the Dodger brand was exclusive to Dodger blue, you can get a Dodger hat in black, red, almost any kind of a color now. So that rigidity of sticking to your color theme and everything it's sort of become broader now, hasn't it?
It's expanded, and there's different categories throughout the year. There's holiday themes, there's season themes. So I think a great logo can be manipulated with different events that come up, but it all goes back to the original logo. Yeah.
How does a strong brand identity influence the direction of a logo design when you're thinking up an idea for that?
Yeah, when a company knows what they're doing and they're knowing why they do it and they do it well, all of that information helps the designers create a logo to help focus their ideas so the audience can find them. It's almost like if you're a ship at sea looking for, the light from the lighthouse. It's like the beckoning call, to find the best product and service. The logo is what they're going to identify with. Which
it seems very often to be the most difficult thing to come up with. And maybe sometimes people wake up in the middle of the night and, all of a sudden, well, there it is. That's what I want. Have you found that some of the best logos come from the simplest of ideas, or do you find that they're always complicated?
I think quite often the simplest ideas are the most complicated and hard work to achieve, because you have to process all this information of research and color and strategy and initiative, and then try to simplify it into a look, a system, a logo that people can understand from different backgrounds, different cultures, different languages, right? It makes me think how well those claymation, if you watch like a lot of these like old claymation movies where there's no language, I'm thinking of Pingu, where you can watch a show where no one speaks but they understand what's going on. You're trying to get back to that kind of logic where it's like universal.
And if you want to ensure consistency of a brand's logo across different platforms, how do you go about doing that?
It's doing the research of all of the different shapes and scales that your logo is going to live, and then having certain rules to your logo that you can flex when needed, but will not lose the integrity of the design. I think of Nike a lot. Nike is the swoosh, right? And we see it in like black and white, but they do so many beautiful things. They might fill it with flowers, or they team up with so many other professional players and looks and colors, but you always go back to that, but they're sticking with the classic shape, so it's still iconic.
We're focusing right now on logos. To me, I'm always fascinated by how people come up with what they come up with. Is there I'm guessing, I talked about rigidity, the Dodgers and athletic teams focused on they're always going to be that color, and now that's changed. Are there any rules anymore when it comes to logo creation? Is there something where you would say, oh, stay away from green, or is there anything like that you can think of?
I don't think there's any hard rules with logos that are just specific to logos. I think each brand identity, each research on the brand will, like, rules to follow or rules to support will start to surface with what you learn from the company, and then you can use them to guide them, to guide the design of the logo.
All right, let's talk about storytelling and how that factors in. You talked about storytelling earlier. I was in the news business. We told stories daily. How does that play into branding?
I think it's through the consumer's experience. I think of storytelling a lot. I also think with a logo, have you heard of this saying, like, you can tell someone you love them, but you can show someone you love them? It's much better to show them. I think that's what logos do. It's like they're showing you the experience that you'll have, and you can see this through, videos, print, rather than someone just telling you that it's good. I think that you identify with that experience with the visual.
Have you ever, and you don't have to mention any bosses or companies by name, have you ever found yourself fighting really hard to talk somebody out of something? Because I think we can all be stubborn, and if it's my company, I want to do it. Have you had to push back in those areas and say, wait a minute, this is going way in the wrong direction?
Yeah. I love this question because it goes back to, like, we're a service industry. So I'm hired for my intelligence and skills to help the brands. If there's a point where the brand doesn't want to listen, I have to respect that. So we try to find a medium. I think the best thing I can do is be transparent and share what I think is best for the company, and then, support them in their choice if they decide to go a different way.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
You have all these years of experience doing something, and then you have a client who isn't familiar with the area that you're an expert in, or quote unquote expert in, and they push back a lot.
I want to add, though, I do think if you help them become part of the creative process and you show them how you're thinking and how you're developing it, I think they start to buy into more of the ideas with understanding that it's research and data based. Even if it comes to, something like a color, we can show that this color is going to work with their brand because this is their audience and this is what resonates through data points. And I think that helps quite a lot.
How do you collaborate with departments to ensure brand identity and design systems align in the creation of the product?
Part of working with a brand is doing intense research and thinking of all of the case instances that a logo would be used, and meeting with the different teams, and then creating a brand book. It's really helpful so they have something to walk away with on how to use the logo in instances. Even for, like, unforeseeable future, we can set them up with systems that can expand and contract.
How has the digital world affected? You're young enough that you've seen much of the digital world. For me, as somebody who was in earned media, we were late to the party. I remember at the companies that I was working at that there was a lot of resistance to going into the digital media world because I think the fear was it could be competition. But this all now plays well together, doesn't it?
Yeah, I love the history of media. I feel in my lifetime, my grandparents would talk about they had a radio and then they had TV and then they had TV and then the TV had color. You're like, whoa, this is crazy. And then, I remember when cable ended and it became digital, and I actually signed up for the government to send me like a voucher card because I wanted to remember that this is like another step moving forward. And those rabbit ears aren't going to work the same anymore, as the technology changes. So, in advertising and print, all of these design boards and decks that we do now, it would be cut out paper and glue within the past 50 years, like not that long ago. So I do think AI has made people feel like it's speeding up even faster, but I think it's just one more step that people have seen in this lifetime already.
What you're saying is it's evolution, but I guess to my point, it all works well together. That there doesn't have to be competition among all the different medias, because if you're a company, you want your brand out there, you want your logo with all of them, I would assume.
Yeah, I think what's changed from everything being so accessible is the budgets have lowered, because now you can create content for so much less, which leaves a lot of space for people to come up with to get visibility for good work rather than a huge investment. I think creativity is starting to percolate more.
The creation of the obvious things like our logos, which is I always enjoy this part of when you think about branding and marketing, and you don't see major companies change very often. If they do, it's really minute. Is that fair to say? Is that because they feel like if they've hit on something, let's not mess with it, right? When Pepsi starts messing, or Coke messes with the recipe a little bit, or KFC does that, people lose their minds. Is that the same with the visual aspects of branding?
I think brands do change and evolve. I was thinking of MasterCard and PayPal just had a beautiful re-explore. But the evolution is very delicate and sensitive, so you're still recognizing the brand even if the font has slightly changed or the colors have slightly changed in shade. I feel like there isn't usually a drastic rebrand. I think it almost is like waves upon a shore, like your logo. If you look at, like, companies have been around for 100 years, I think you'll see like every a decade or 2 decades, there are slight changes, but it's not so different that you wouldn't recognize it.
All right. We like to get to know our guests a little bit. I know what you do here at the company because I see you here and I work with you. What do you like to do for fun? Tell us about your work-life balance so we can get to know you a little bit.
Oh, wow. I am a very curious person. So when we're on a project, like, I'm digging in on my free time, like, oh, what's a more efficient way to do this? Or what are people doing in different parts of the world? Like, what are people doing in this country? What are people doing in this country? I love building a repository of research. So that's how I like to nerd out and have fun. And I would say for sports and athletic stuff, I like to definitely run on the beach. It's a big thing that I enjoy.
That's great. Okay, what advice would you have to offer to someone trying to join your efforts to make this a more colorful world?
Oh, that's a great question. I think if someone's starting out on a career, I remember being so confused. What is a job actually like? And then when I got into an office, I really had a panic attack because it felt so confining. So I think it's good to research, through LinkedIn or your parents' friends or friends, and just take them out to coffee or, have a FaceTime and say, what is your day-to-day like? Like, can I just look at your Outlook calendar? And, and it's start to dig in a little bit, because then as I grew and understood that you can be creative and have loud moments and it's not always a confined office, I obviously, became okay with the routine. But I think research and be open to change in your mind. You might think one job sounds wonderful, but you might not actually like to do it once you're there. And I really strongly feel about transferable skills. Like, whatever you're learning, even if you didn't enjoy the job, you can take something from it, and you're probably meeting wonderful people that are good at what they do.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love to tell our interns that same thing, is that you don't feel the pressure that you have to fall in love with this job, but maybe there's some aspects of this job that you fall in love with that you may want to pursue down the road that may be, okay, that's what it is. So I think sometimes as young people, we feel like we get stuck in an area. And I like how you approach it, that there's more to the world around you. You don't want to be too confined into, and I think everybody should approach life that way.
Yeah, and I try with my management skills is to find out, what each team member is interested in and see if there's work, that can facilitate those interests to make it more enjoyable, right? Like we want to enjoy our day. So I feel like I'm constantly doing research on my own team to help, everyone's motivation and effort feel, just so we can all be in the flow at least every once in a while. Yeah.
Stephanie Keane is the creative director at Lee Andrews Group. Thank you so much, Steph, for joining us on the Idea People at Lee Andrews Group. We appreciate it. It wasn't too painful, was it?
No, it was wonderful. You have a great radio voice.
Oh, well, thank you for that. For more information about us, check us out at leeandrewsgroup.com.
Okay, the podcast set up downtown. We got motion. What's the idea, people? The conversation's open. Lee Andrews Group, the firm. Yeah, we here now. Let's talk about great ideas. Have a sit. We on a mission. You get the idea, people. Glad you pulled up. How you doing? Nice to meet you.